Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Writer's Chat. We're so glad that you're with us. My name is Johnny Alexander. I'm here with my lovely co-hosts, Brandy Bro and Melissa Stroh. I love the way their names rhyme. I just always like want to pause and say them. And we're here with a very special guest today, and I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to introduce her.
Well, it's a treat today to have Nancy I. Sanders with us. And for those who don't know, Nancy is the best-selling and award-winning KidLit author of more than 100 books, including her newest for babies and toddlers, Bedtime with Mommy. A follower of Jesus and a believer in the Word, everything she writes is from a biblical worldview. Half of her books are in the general market and half are published in the Christian market. She has self-published 2 how-to-write books with an insider's peek on the industry and oodles of tips and strategies she used to get published over her career. Yes, you can learn how to write children's books, get them published, and build a successful writing career is chock full of helpful career advice and practical applications you can use. Yes, you can learn how to write beginning readers, and chapter books is a must-have resource if you want to write for kids. And today she's going to share with us on the topic of writing picture books for children. So we're really excited to hear from you today, Nancy. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Let's start with a prayer today.
Oh, great.
Dear God, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I thank you for every person who's here this morning and everyone who's going to join us later. I just ask that you will continue to guide us and inspire us and lead us on a mission to bring your gospel to the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And then I also like to start with a scripture. And I thought the theme verse for today's chat could be, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. And that's Philippians 3:14. And so I like to always pick a theme verse for every project I do. And I thought this would be a good one for today's event. So in today's chat, we'll be discussing 3 major key points. And one is we will discuss the current market for the picture book and how it affects us as writers. We'll be focusing on the fiction picture book market. And then the second one is I will share the actual process of brainstorming that I go through, because that is a key ingredient in writing a picture book, as it is with all books that we write or even manuscripts. But I really go through an intense brainstorming process when I come up with an idea for today's picture book market. And then I'll be sharing number 3, the writing process I go through, especially the one I took to go through writing Bedtime with Mommy, which is a rhyming board book. So it is a picture book, but it is also classified as a board book. And so those are the 3 things I'll be talking about. And I also want you to know that I do have an open question policy when I teach, meaning you can ask me anything, even if you think, oh, is it polite to ask that question? Yes, because I figure if we can't help each other and support each other as authors, who's going to help us? So please, just feel free. If you have a question about anything, even something we're not talking about it, I will welcome that question. And I'll tell you if I'm under contract that I can't answer it, but otherwise I'll try to help you answer it. Okay, so for our chat today, I'm going to talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll stop and we'll take questions on that topic, and then I'll move on. So first, we're going to talk about the current picture book market. Now, if you write for picture books, you probably already know that it is probably the most difficult market to actually get published in. And some people don't understand why. Well, there's a big reason. It's because of the money. A picture book, first of all, they have to hire an illustrator, and illustrators are quite expensive. Then the printing costs are super expensive. They have to do every page in full color. And so it is so expensive to make. And then it's so expensive to sell. And parents and grandparents are pretty reluctant to put out $18, $19 on a book they don't know who wrote it or what it's about. It's a lot of money to go out for there. So the fiction picture book is even harder for us to get published today, because at least the nonfiction picture book is used in schools. So teachers will buy a lot of those automatically. But the fiction picture book is the hardest of all. So that's the bad news that we have to deal with. And so when you look at my writing career, you'll see that at the beginning of my career, I hardly published any fiction picture books at all, because I was using that time to learn how to write picture books. And I've attended picture book classes and read books on how to write them. And so I've been earning my money as a career author, writing for the educational market, the nonfiction picture book market, just all other ways, but not as a fiction picture book market. So there is a way that publishers get around the fact that the fiction picture book is the hardest book to sell in the market too. And one is they will offer in the general market picture books to celebrities. You'll find celebrity books out there because they know that celebrity will automatically have a number base that they can sell to. And they will also offer book contracts, picture book contracts to influencers, you know, the mommy bloggers who have 20,000 followers on Instagram or more. They're willing to take a chance on those people too. Now, in the Christian market, you'll see they offer contracts to the big pastors of big churches or gals who run huge ministries like MOPS and things like that. And so again, these are influencers who the publisher knows will have an automatic base where they can sell their books. So the other thing that publishers do to get around this is if you are an unknown author and they just absolutely love your picture book, they will pair you up with a famous illustrator. Now, I had that happen. This is a nonfiction picture book that I wrote. It's called D is for Drinking Gourd, and it's illustrated by E.B. Lewis. And E.B. Lewis had just won the Caldecott Honor the year before, so he was ranked one of the highest illustrators in the market. And so even before that book was printed, it had sold over 70,000 copies in pre-sales. So that is another way a publisher will get around the fact that picture books are hard to sell. Okay, so the question is, how does all that information I just threw at you affect us as picture book writers? Well, the answer is what I call the triple crown of success. And I was mentioned, I wrote a book. I self-published this book. This is the Yes You Can book that Melissa mentioned. And in there, I really talk in depth about the triple crown of success because it is my philosophy of what I've used to get, I'm probably up to 130 or so books published now in my career. And so basically, in a nutshell, for the triple crown of success, I have 3 goals as a writer. Goal number 1 is I want to get published regularly and often. And goal number 2 is I want to earn income. And yes, I do earn a nice income as a writer. And number 3, I do want to write for personal fulfillment. Now, the key is I do not choose one manuscript to meet all those 3 goals. I choose to write a separate manuscript to meet each one of those goals. For example, to get published frequently, I don't count a picture book under that goal at all. I mean, it can take me a year to write a picture book manuscript. It can take another year to find a publisher. It can take 2 more years after that for them to get it illustrated. So I do not choose a fiction picture book to write to get published frequently. Instead, I write for magazines. For example, here's a magazine I write for. This is the fiction feature on the front cover. And I get published by that magazine 2 to 5 times a year. And so I'm writing fiction for them. They're basically the same length as a fiction picture book. I'm getting it published frequently. I feel validated as an author. I'm not earning a ton of income from it. And it's not a book, but I'm doing that to get published. So I always recommend try to find a project, a magazine, an online magazine that you're getting, working with an editor, with something that you can get published frequently and feel validated as an author. And then for the goal of writing for income, as I mentioned, I will usually do work for hire. I will do the educational market. In fact, right now I'm doing this in my career. I am trying to line up about 3 to 5 book contracts for the next year. So I'm earning my income as a writer. And so I'll just ask for one deadline. Let's see, this is October. I'll ask for one deadline maybe in January. I'll ask for another deadline maybe in March or April. I just ask for deadlines, spread them out so that I know I'm earning income. And some of those will be work for hire because I get cash right up front. And some of those will be royalty. And even if I don't get an advance, I know that years down the road, I'll still be getting royalties, hopefully, from them. So, okay. And then the third one is writing for personal fulfillment. That's where my fiction picture books come in. That's where Bedtime for Mommy came in. I just wanted to write a book that I really wanted to do. And so, yes, it got picked up by a publisher. Yes, I got paid. Yes, it's going to do all the other things. But my intent was I worked on it as my personal fulfillment goal. And then the other things just kind of happen. So right now, I'd like to see if anybody has any questions about this part of the section that we talked in.
Okay, we don't have any questions, but I have got to say, just from no matter what genre you write, nonfiction, fiction, and whatever within those, I think your Triple Crown of Success is probably one of the best things I've heard as far as just making a plan for yourself. And I mean, I have heard people talk about careers and stuff for a long time, but Nancy, I absolutely love this idea of having these 3 things and choosing different things to go under them. Again, no matter what you write. And I think on a subconscious level, I may be doing that in some ways, but I love that you actually laid it out like that.
I'm so glad. I have heard so many authors struggle. They have a manuscript that they feel is really valid and worthwhile, and then they get an offer from the contract, and it's a really low financial offer, and they can't justify selling that because they're trying to lump all 3 goals into one manuscript.
Exactly.
Yes. And so I know there was one project I probably worked on for 4 to 6 years with a publisher, and it was a no income project, meaning I didn't get any advance or anything, but I did sign a contract and asked for royalties if it's sold. And so that particular project I did for personal fulfillment, it is one of my biggest income bringers now.
Wow.
And so because I approached it with just the one goal in mind, I enjoyed the whole journey. I was working on other projects at the time to earn income. And it just made so much sense psychologically. It really helped me go through that. So I'm glad you like that.
Yes.
You know,
I'm really going to be thinking about this and kind of working this out in my head. It was great.
Great. You know, the sun just came out. It was not. Do you want me to shut that shade real quick? Would that help? Yeah, let me go shut that.
She said that and I look, but my sun has already been, it's already been out, but I still had to look at the
There we
window.
go. That should be better. Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay.
Oh,
All right.
gosh.
So yeah. So anything else anyone wanted to touch on that before I move forward?
Pam had a comment.
Okay.
She said she discovered she loves writing short stories for ages 15 and up, and it's been accepted in 3 anthologies in less than a year. Congrats for that.
Yay!
Small pay, big satisfaction, and she's a picture book author at heart. I guess my only question is, and you may be talking about this later on, if so, we can just save it. But when you think how few words are in a picture book, the idea that you have worked on it. I mean, I can write a novel in 4 months.
Right.
Of about 55,000 words. And it takes a year or more to write a picture book. It just,
On some of them, yes.
it's
One
astounding to me.
One story that's funny is I actually have a set of 30 little mini books that come in 10 box sets, and each book is only comprised of one sentence. I cannot tell you the length it took with the editor rounds to go through fixing those one sentences for each book, because every word has to be perfect. So
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 hacks. If you want to try to get a picture book published right now for personal fulfillment, again, this isn't if you want to earn income, and this isn't if you want to get published frequently, but if you really have that desire to get a picture book published in today's current market, here are 3 hacks that you can do. Number 1, team up with an influencer that you know. Now, I have co-authored a number of books. It's a fun thing to do. And I'm actually seeing friends of mine today in today's market teaming up with some pretty big influencers in their lives. And so they're getting contracts because the publisher knows that influencer will help sell the book. Now, if you're a new writer, I don't recommend contacting an influencer you do not know and saying, can I team up with you to write a book? But if you know of an influencer in your life, then by all means, contact them and say, hey, I'm a picture book writer. Would you like me to help write your book for you? And we could pair up. And so that's a really good step to try to get your foot in the door. Another way is, another hack is to learn how to be a piggyback writer. I also talk about this in my book, my how-to book about, yes, you can learn how to write children's books. A piggyback writer is something I stumbled onto in middle grade nonfiction. I had found a series that was published by different authors. And so I contacted them, and they were interested in my idea. I became one of their team of writers. I mean, not a team, but really I've written a number of books for them because they have these series. And so I just wrote books that plugged into their series. And I know the one book I wrote for them, within a month it had sold 35,000 copies because it was just part of the series. Wow. And so I have a friend, Ev Christensen, found a series of books called The 12 Days of Christmas in America, and they wanted an author in each state to write for that picture book. And so she pitched an idea for her state and landed a contract and got to write it. And so she earned success as part of that series. So if you can be looking through book catalogs and find picture book series that use different authors, then that is a great way to get your foot in the door with a picture book also. And the other hack is this, if you don't want to tap into somebody else's series, do consider creating a picture book that is part of a series. And that's what I did with Bedtime with Mommy, because what comes next, Bedtime with Daddy, which I just signed a contract, and it can go on for quite a while, even Bedtime with Auntie or Bedtime with, so cousins or so as part of a series. And the way that I do this in a proposal is, in my picture book proposal, I say, this picture book is a standalone title, or it can be part of a series. And here I list 3 books that could be part of the series. And the reason that I do it that way is because some publishers don't want a series, and so they only want a standalone title. And so they don't want a book that is dependent on being a series. But for the publisher who really does want a series and doesn't want to just take a gamble on a single book that can get lost in the bookshelves at a bookstore, and they do want a series, I do like to include that option, or it can be part of a series. And so that is the other hack that I recommend. All right. I want to share about the brainstorming process that I take now to especially to write Bedtime with Mommy. It took me about 6 months of brainstorming to get this idea. And I know it did because I sat down one day and I said, I want to write a new picture book. Okay. And so I know when I started that process, and I could take the time to do that because obviously I'm working on other manuscripts at the same time to earn income and to get published. So when I start my brainstorming process, especially for Bedtime with Mommy, I was looking for 4 key ingredients. Number 1, I wanted a book that could be a potential series because, as I just mentioned, that's one of the hacks that I always like to look for a picture book. Number 2, I wanted an idea for a book that would catch an editor's eye because it would sell big. And to be honest, that was one of my selling points with this manuscript for publisher. I said, this book is gonna sell big. And I'll tell you why I knew that. And then number 3, I wanted an idea for a story with a universal theme that every kid would know about and that every parent would know about. And that universal theme meant that there might be a zillion books on this topic already out there, a zillion picture books, because yes, it's a universal theme. But then number 4, the 4th ingredient I was looking for is I wanted to brainstorm a unique slant on that theme. So what did my brainstorming session look like? For starters, I collect lists of universal themes. Now, I have free worksheets that you can go to one of my websites and you can print down free worksheets. And one of them is, there's like several lists of universal themes. So the website is called writingaccordingtohumphrey.wordpress.com. And I can type that somewhere if you want me to. Where's a good place? If I go in the chat. Okay, so I'll go in the chat and I'll type that in there. And you guys can, okay, you guys couldn't go.
That's great, because that way I don't have to worry about misspelling something.
Yes. And you can go on there and you can see HREY Humphrey, yeah, .wordpress. And I have a tab on there. Okay, and then I just enter to send the message, writing according to humphrey.wordpress.com. Yes. So you go to that website and I have a tab on there that says Writer's Notebook Worksheets. And these are all freebies for you to download. These are actual worksheets I use whenever I write. And so if you scroll down, you'll see.
And Nancy,
list.
did you hit enter on the chat? Because I don't see it in the chat.
Yes, I did. Did I not? I see it in the chat. Oh, you know what? It went to somebody. It went to Catherine Sorts. So how do I get that?
If you toggle the 2 section so that you can put it on everyone, then everybody will get it.
Okay.
You
I mean,
see that
you
little
know what?
section in the chat area?
No, but maybe I'll just highlight it and copy it and then copy it. I'll try this over again. Okay. So I type the message there and paste that. And then I'll give it to everybody. There we go. I'm so glad you caught that.
And I just sent you a private message, so it will automatically come. Yep. Yay, everybody.
Great. Yay. Okay,
Thanks.
great. Oh, you're welcome. So yeah, so go there and click on the Writer's Notebook Worksheet tab, and then you're going to scroll down and look for a list of universal themes. For example, here's my list of universal themes for ages 0 to 3. And I have universal themes for ages 4 to 7 and on up. And those are not a definitive, they're not a complete list. It's meant for you to add to them as you brainstorm ideas. But one of the universal themes on there is bedtime, because every child has to go to bed and every parent deals with that. And so I started reading current titles in this genre. And I started reading a lot. I wanted to do it for the Christian market. This time I write half for the general, half for the Christian. I wanted to make it definitely for the Christian market. So I started getting a ton of current titles to read, to see what was being published. And there are several places that you can go to find current picture books published in the Christian market. And one is a blog that I write for, and it's called christianchildrensauthors.com. And I put that down here in the chat room too. And we are a group of a bunch of Christian children's authors. That's the name, why. And a lot of times they will interview their new books. We'll do book releases. And if you follow along on that blog, click to subscribe to that blog, you will get a lot of current information about books that are just coming out in the Christian market. And so it's a great way to see what's current. And then you can also join private Facebook groups. Like there's one I belong to. You just go to Facebook, type in Christian children's book authors and ask to join their group, because there's some pretty big names in there, and they all go, hey, everybody, my new book just came out. Would you help spread the word? And so you really can stay on top of what's currently coming out in that group. And so I started studying both sites to see what books are coming out. And I also started following some specific current children book authors in the market, in social media, to see what they were saying about what books were coming out. So that's how and I also looked at catalogs online to see Zondervan, Zonder Kids, Harvest House, Tommy Nelson, Worthy. I started looking at these catalogs to see what their current books are. So I had a feel for what kind of books were coming out. Now, to read those books is a little different. I ordered as many of them as I could from our local library. I also purchased a number of them from a local Christian bookstore to give as gifts. But I read them first. I typed out a bunch of them first before I gave them as gifts. And so I had those under our belt too. Plus, I connected with some of the authors that I'm in these groups with, and I offered that if they wanted to send me a digital copy of the book, I would give them a 5-star review. And so I don't recommend asking for a hard copy because those add up really fast. But if you want to read some current children's books, Christian children's books, just if you can say, I will offer a review, I'll review on Amazon, on Goodreads, I'll post the review on Twitter and stuff, then you could ask for a digital arc of their book. So you could do that. And then you can also become a book reviewer. There's 3 sites that are good for this. NetGalley. Are you familiar with NetGalley? And there's Edelweiss Plus. For those who aren't, just Google NetGalley. And if you can sign up, I don't think it costs anything to sign up. You just say you want to do book reviews. And Edelweiss, and then booklookbloggers.com is on there too. And if you need any of those, I can put those in the chat too. But those will have the most current books coming out. In fact, oftentimes they'll only have a little window of time that you can read the book and post a review. But those are great ways to actually read current titles that are coming out. So there were also 4 other activities that I did during this stage of my brainstorming process. Well, that I do in general. I pray and ask the Holy Spirit to guide me and inspire me. Now, one thing about that is I believe that the Holy Spirit can guide us and inspire us to write books, but it doesn't mean that he's called us to actually publish the book. You never know that unless it actually gets published. So like this last couple years, I've probably written 20 fiction picture books that never got published, but this one, Bedtime with Mommy, did. but I still pray and ask the Holy Spirit to guide me and inspire me along the journey that God wants me to take, whether it's just for my critique group to read or an editor to read or what. That's not in my control, but I will follow and write that. And then this is another part of the brainstorming process. Number 2, just before I go to bed, I will read current picture books. Even if I've read it 5 times, I'll read them again just before I go to bed. And I'll keep a journal where I'm doing my brainstorming, and I'll write down and jot down ideas as I read it again. And then I fall asleep thinking of potential ideas. And it is amazing how my brain works while I'm asleep. And in the morning, I will come up with these most amazing ideas. So I'm preparing my brain and the Holy Spirit to work while I'm asleep. And it just is an amazing process. So at some point along my journey of reading tons of current picture books, I decided I wanted to write a bedtime book. You know, I toyed with a long time about a first tooth book, because I know every child loses their first tooth. But then I thought, no, you know, I want to do a bedtime book. That was my big universal theme. So then I needed a unique slant. Well, since I'd been reading a ton of books, I knew I needed now to read a ton of bedtime books. So I narrowed my focus. First, I was reading and rereading all these current picture books. But now that I picked the bedtime theme, I went and in whether it was general market or Christian market, I now ordered in tons and tons of bedtime picture books. And so I read and read and read. And I discovered 2 things. Thing number 1 was there were a lot of books about animals, which I like. And there were also written in rhyme, which I'm not the best at, but I do study. I read how to write poetry books. I read a lot of books in rhyme. I try to learn skills of writing in rhyme. So I decided to choose animals and choose writing in rhyme. That was part of the process. And I had just spent a year creating a product that I sell for teachers on my own. I self-published them. And those were 42 little mini books about animal habitats. And so I noticed there were no bedtime books with animals as their habitat. So I thought that could be my unique slant on bedtime. So I decided to pick animals from habitats around the world, which I felt, you know, that will really help with all the call for diversity today in today's book culture. I thought if I pick animals from habitats around the world, children around the world will find connection with this. And to be honest, they are talking about translating. It's already going to be translated into Russian. They're talking about translating in different animals into different languages because it features these different animals from around the world. Okay, so then after I found my unique slant, which was habitats, I brainstormed ideas to sell it big. So the big thing that I saw as I walked around through Walmart, you know, through different stores, through the drug stores, even in airports I went to, the mommy baby books were huge. Everywhere you go, you know, I love you. You know, the little rabbit that loves, there's just all these mommy baby books that are selling right now. So I thought, okay, for this to be a big selling book, I was going to turn this into a mommy baby book. It just wasn't about a child going to bed. I felt to take it to the big level, I was going to do a mommy baby book. And so that's what my process went through to get to where I reached. I wanted to do it, you know, mommy baby, bedtime, and written in rhyme, and about animals and habitats, and to show that all this brainstorming worked. It was a process of about 6 months, I told you. Before it sold, before it was printed, it has already sold 7,000 copies in pre-sales. It was picked up to be carried in drugstores around the country. And people tell me, everywhere I go, people tell me they're buying them in multiples to give at baby showers. And then also, when it first came out, it hit #1 new release on Amazon in 3 different categories. And the first week of publication, I think it sold out on the publisher site. So all this to show that my brainstorming really did work. It all came together. So, oh, and it just won a gold award too. It just won a gold award for the Moonbeam children's book. So just to show you that process of brainstorming was really worthwhile. I just didn't toss an idea out there and hurry up and write it. I really was intentional about my brainstorming. Okay, so do you have any questions about this part of our chat?
We have a couple of questions. I'm not sure they're really targeted to this particular part because you're doing such a fantastic job at giving steps on your process, and I absolutely love everything that you're telling us.
Thank you.
Catherine had asked, have you found that success and presumably public recognition makes it harder to maintain boundaries between work hours and your personal downtime?
Well, that's a good question. I am a career writer. That means that when my husband was a teacher for 37 years. And so when he left for work at 6:30 in the morning, I would often be up working, and I would work till he came home at 6:30 at night. So I had to stop attending fun events during the day. I had to stop going out to lunch with my friends, a long time. I had to treat my day as if I too got in a car and drove away and went to work for that long. But so that, yes, I had to put boundaries on that way. But also I wrote full-time from September to June because that's when he was at work. But then in the summertime, I didn't. I really tried to take the summer off when my kids were home from school and husband home from work. And so that kind of helped me have that balance. But if I had not treated this job as a full-time job, I wouldn't be earning the income that I earn. Now my husband's retired. And so I haven't signed a huge contract to have a huge deadline like I have before. Like, for instance, I wrote a book, a huge nonfiction book for Zonder kids, and they asked me to write it in a month, and I'm like, oh, how about 2 months? And they said, well, we'll have to ask to the publishing board about that. But I finally got 2 months out of them. But, there's those kind of deadlines that you deal with as a career writer. And I haven't done one of those since he retired. But, so my time is more my own. But yeah, so I hope that answers that.
So it sounds like you really just integrate your work with your life, but you set boundaries to have the personal time and the work time to make sure both are met.
Absolutely.
I think that's wise. And it's going to look different for each person. Mm-hmm. Yep. Somebody else asked if you have an agent.
I do. Now I have landed over 100, probably 120 book contracts without an agent. But if you want to write a picture book and get a picture book published in today's market, you do need an agent. Unless you're going to work with a small publisher who says in their description in the Writer's Market Guide that they do not require an agent. But I knew that if I wanted to write picture books, I needed an agent. So yes, I did get an agent. I'm probably 4 years ago when I decided to really focus on picture books more.
All right, and we have a follow-up question to that. Elaine says, I know you sell both to the Christian market and the secular market. and she knows that you do some self-publishing. So how does that work? Especially if you have an agent.
Oh, okay. Well, some agents are career agents. You have to sign with them to do your career. And then other agents, you just sign with them for projects. And so if you want to handle your own contracts, you just find an agent who's okay signing with projects.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
All right, that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay,
a
great.
question.
Oh, sure.
Except for Johnny.
Well, I was wondering because I know a lot of agents don't handle picture books. So do you have an agent who really focuses in on picture books and children's books?
Oh, no. I'll tell you who my agent is. My agent is Kyle Young.
Oh, okay.
And he will do anything. Yes,
Yeah, he
so
does.
he's good. Yeah. And so he's good. He does both the general and Christian for me. So I know some people just have him for the Christian market, but he does both markets for me.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so now I want to share about the actual writing process. And we're going to focus on 4 ingredients that I really focus on. One is the voice. The other is the plot. The other is the characters. And in picture books, the 4th ingredient that is paramount is word choice. So I'll share the process that I took to write Bedtime with Mommy for each of these ingredients. Now, for voice, as I mentioned earlier, in my reading of all the reading I was doing, since I decided to do a bedtime book and basically a bedtime baby book, Bedtime with Mommy, those books are all written in rhyme. If you find them, they're just all written in rhyme. So I knew my voice had to be written in rhyme. So I really labored over that and read it aloud a lot and read it to my husband a lot and read, so I really worked on working that in rhyme. So when you decide you want to write a certain type of fiction picture book, gather a ton of them and see what kind of voice they have. Is it the voice told through a little child, through the main character? Is it a voice told through a narrator? Just see what the voice is and determine what kind of voice you're going to use whenever you write that. All right, so plot. There are basically 2 kinds of plots in a children's book. There's the predictable plot, and then there's the 3-act structure. The predictable plot means it starts on the first page and then you just turn every page and every page carries the same weight. Like an alphabet book is typically a predictable plot. So a few years ago, I want to say 5 to 8 years ago, I could not sell a predictable plot in either the general market or the Christian market. I would send in predictable plot manuscripts and the editors would just say, we don't take predictable plot. We don't take a plot like this. You need a story arc. So there's a difference. There's a predictable plot. And if you go on that Writing According to Humphrey website, there is a list you can download that shows, I think, about 10 different predictable plots. Like, for instance, there's the building plot, like there was an old lady who swallowed a fly, where every page she swallows something more. Those are the increasing. So you'll see a list of what predictable plots are. And there's also a link to an article that explains how to write them. And then there's the 3-act structures. Now, that type of a plot is very common. And as I said, back 5 to 8 years ago, editors would only take the 3-act structure. That means it has a beginning, it has a turning point at the end, it builds to a climax. And so the 3-act structure is a very key plot structure that every writer in every genre needs to learn. But when I was looking at the bedtime books, the mommy books, a lot of them right now currently are the predictable plots, meaning every page carries the same weight. And so I opted to do a predictable plot for Bedtime with Mommy, meaning you open it up and it's talking about the polar bear baby going to bed. You turn the page, it's talking about the elephant baby going to bed. You turn the page, it's talking about the panda baby. So that's predictable plot. And those kind of books are selling right now in the current market. And so that's the plot that I chose to use for this book. Characters. I had already decided on using animal characters. You'll hear some people say they don't want animals. It's just really a preference of editors and publishers. And so if you're reading the publisher's catalogs and you see they only use children as characters, then you will want to use children as your characters. But if you see that the current catalogs that you're studying for the type of picture book that you want to write and they use animals, and by all means you can use animals. Now, I just didn't use random animals. Since I was doing habitats around the world, I chose very carefully which animals to use in which habitat. And because I wanted this book to sell big, I chose animals that are big sellers in today's market. I know you put a panda or a polar bear in a book and it's just going to go gangbusters. You put a sloth in a book and it just goes gangbusters. And so I really try to pick animals that I knew were parents, just warm fuzzies, their grandparents, they would want to buy the book. And then I also worked on the character development to really match the animals with their natural characteristics. For the elephant baby, I have the elephant baby taking a shower with the mommy squirting her out of her nose. And I have the panda baby having a snack before bed of bamboo. And I have the animal monkey baby being rocked in a tree. You know, I really try to develop the characters to match what type of animals there were. And finally, word choice. So word choice is a big deal in a picture book. Every single word counts. So what I did for Bedtime with Mommy, and I do this with tons of books I write, is I make word lists. I have an actual list of bedtime words such as snuggles, bath time, twinkling stars, goodnight kisses. And once again, I reordered a ton of books from the library, bedtime books. I got a lot of reread my bedtime books, and I just pulled words out of those bedtime books and added them to my list that were good bedtime words. And then I also created a list of faith-focused words because I really wanted this book to be a book of faith. I just didn't want it to be some sweet little book to read. I wanted it to be a book where mommies could really impart faith into their little ones. And so I just got a bunch of Christian picture books out and I made a list of faith words like prayers and psalms and reading the Bible, God's promises, praying a blessing. And so I have these actual lists of words that I check off. And so when I went to write the second book in the series, Bedtime with Daddy, I already had so much of my work done for me. I had these lists I can use. I knew the universal theme. It was much quicker process to write the second book. So in conclusion, I'm going to wrap up now. We talked about the current picture book market and how we as writers need to be in tune with it because it does shape our writing goals and our writing successes. I showed you the brainstorming process I went through to write Bedtime with Mommy and to find ideas to write a winning book in today's market. And finally, I showed you some of the writing process that I take while I'm writing a picture book. So thanks for coming.
We have a couple other questions.
Okay, great.
So Ben wants to know if you use the Children's Writers Word Book.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite books. It's right here in my shelf and it's a great one. Now, a children's writer's word book is excellent in the educational market. And if you're writing a beginning reader or a chapter book, and I actually have a book. This is my other Yes You Can book. It's Yes You Can Learn How to Write Beginning Readers and Chapter Books. One of my best sellers, yeah, there it is. There's the word book. One of my best-selling books is For It with Scholastic, and it's an early reader. And yes, the Children's Writer's Word Book is an essential tool if you're going to write for children.
Great. Another question. Do you have fan problems such as specialized professionals report? In other words, you can't go to a soccer game without somebody wanting to start a discussion about your books, or a book level discussion on one of your titles, or maybe somebody who wants you to offer ideas for a title or wants a way to get into the publishing industry.
Okay.
To deal with that.
Well, I have that everywhere I go, from family members to church, to being on an airplane, to anywhere I go. And my philosophy is an open door policy. We are a community. We are here to help each other. I'm happy to help you and offer any ideas. Again, at church, I give them my phone number. I say, anybody who needs any help with anything, you just let them give me a call. You don't have to even ask me, because God is calling people to write books. And if we can't help each other, who's going to help us? So, yeah.
I'd like to add that you don't have to be well known for this to happen. I just went to my local swimming pool, and somebody found out that I was a writer and started asking me all kinds of questions, and then saying that they had an idea that they thought maybe I should work on. And so it can be challenging sometimes, and you don't have to be really well known. And I would just say that probably trust God in that moment for how to answer.
Absolutely. That's great. That is great.
Nancy, you have such the heart of a teacher. Do you have a teaching background? I know you said your husband taught.
Yes, I went to school to be a teacher for about 1.5 years, and then I got married. And after getting married, I decided I wanted to be a writer. So
Wow. All right. Well, this has been so great. If everybody wants to come back on really quick, if we put you in Writers Chat jail, let us know. And we'll get you back out again. And if anyone has a question, Isabel's here. Yeah, I'm so glad to see you. And not sure who else. Ben is here, and I didn't know he was here either. And congrats to him for, now I forget what he told us, but he
He had a
something
second book
great
being
happen.
published in November, I think he said.
Yes, so
Yep.
that was really,
Wow.
really good. So congrats to Ben for that. Does anyone have Janice, we're glad to have you here today with
And
us.
Pam has Willoughby from her children's book.
Willoughby's here, and Willoughby's very, very excited because, he's the main character of a picture book series, but he wants to learn how to write a picture book himself. So he had to come with me today.
Oh, that's great. That's
Hey,
great.
Hey, Johnny, I put in the HemingwayApp.com. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that app, but it will actually grade your writing to a level. It
That's
does a
cool.
lot of different things, but so if you're writing for a 4 to 8 year old, but your manuscript shows up as a grade 8, then you need to redo some of those words. So I appreciate what Nancy shared, because my children's book series is Created Critters. And so that detailing, the first one's with wings, the second one's with fur. My third one will be from the Arctic, and probably my fourth one will be Created Critters from Australia. So when you start looking at how you can expand that one theme or series, it's open to however you're limited in your own mind. And so always having that more than one book option, I think is good. Probably helped me land the publisher that I have.
Oh, congratulations, Ben. That is so exciting. The other thing too is I think in Microsoft Word, if you do a spell check, it will also give you the grade level for your manuscript. Have you found that out too?
I just use that Hemingway app.
Okay.
And it has a lot of other tools in there, just like Microsoft. And like you said, as a rhyming picture book person, I really love using the app on Microsoft to read the book to me and have the computer read it to me. So you don't have you can pick up those near rhymes and change them to actual rhymes. And there's so many resources out there.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. That's helpful. Nancy, did you choose not to use any animals because it would have been hard to do the rhyming?
Pardon me?
When you were doing this book and choosing animals to use, did you like reject an animal because it would have been hard to come up with a rhyme?
No, because one thing I've learned about rhyming is no matter how terribly difficult your word is, just stick it in the middle of the line and use an easy word at the end. So,
Okay.
Amen.
Oh, that's interesting.
I love to do rhyme myself.
Oh, good, good.
I wrote a rhyming story for children long time ago when I was very new, and I pulled it out not too long ago, and I'm like, this isn't as terrible as I expected it to be. But it's kind of big for rhyming. I'm like, I don't know if I should even mess with this now, but it was kind of fun to pull it out. It's challenging to create a full story in rhyme, especially if it's not one of those one of the patterns that repeating thingies I can't.
A refrain.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of like, yeah. But if like you're like trying to put in a full story and it's not just one of those
Predictable plots. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just not coming up with a word at the moment. Predictable plots. Thank you.
And the rhyming has to be right on. I mean, you said that you still study it, and it is. If you know, I think I can rhyme, but I know that not like that. I mean, not at that level. You just absolutely have to have every syllable.
You have to rhyme, but you have to have a good story too.
Exactly.
You don't, and it's very tricky. Very tricky.
Pam, did you
Cadence. It's like writing music. You know, music lyrics has to be right on cadence. And I do freelance editing for children's picture books, for years, and lots of people love to send me the rhyming stuff, and they put in words just for the sake of the rhyme. It doesn't even make sense in the story, and then I have to tell them that. But what I found interesting, I had one client who did a whole book, and it was for older crowd than the picture book crowd, and his rhymes were so good. The story was so good that when I read it out loud, it felt good in my mouth, like I was eating something delicious.
That's wonderful.
I mean, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But I just thought, I've read that book. Oh, I don't know what he ever did with it, but I read it over and over and over just because it felt good to read. Very cool and weird, but that's me.
Forced rhyme is a much. Remember when I worked for the Children's Writer newsletter, I talked to editors all the time and so what they don't like. Forced verse is and animal characters are pet peeves because so many people assume all kids like them. If you just do it in that format, then voila, you got this bestseller. Or you do the format well or not.
Well,
Nancy, congratulations on your Moonbeam Award.
Oh, thank you.
You were in the same category as me, and I didn't get selected, so that's okay.
Sorry.
And neither did one of our other regulars in here. Michelle and I kind of cried on each other's shoulders.
Oh.
I found out that Michelle today in Cuddle Up Prayers was the book of the year for Goodreads.
Wow, that's so exciting.
So, you don't win one competition, but you might win another one. But, the best thing, and Nancy, I'm sure you will appreciate this, is getting a picture of a child falling asleep with your book in their hands because they love it, or asking, we left the book out in the rain, can we get another signed copy? Or, and so when you get the feedback back from the kids or the parents, I think that's the treasure that lasts forever.
Absolutely.
The best is, and this is what I got for Willoughby. We had to hide Willoughby because we were so sick and tired of reading it. Yes, my work here is done.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because if the kids don't love the book, what's the point?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Nancy, again, thank you so much. I don't write picture books at all and never plan to, but I took like 3 pages of notes.
Oh, wow.
I know, because I just love your processes. And
Thank you.
Well, they're good for not just picture books, they're good for
Absolutely.
writing across the board. They're just wonderful.
what you shared was just wonderful. So thank you. And there were comments in the chat about the prep time. And so often we just want to, we have the idea, and we just want to jump in and do it. And you really have demonstrated how important it is to be, I like you're intentional and the prep work that you do. So
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me here today. This was
You're
great.
very welcome. I hope you'll come back again.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
Wonderful. Brandy, you want to tell us about next week?
Sure. Next week, we are doing a Come Write With Us session, and it will be on creativity. So I'm going to have some fun exercises. I want you to come prepared with pen and paper, because we're going to maybe do a little bit of something that's not words next week, but it will boost your creativity to be able to work with words. I think it'll be just fun. It will be fun.
Sounds like fun.
It will be fun. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you for those that are here in the community. Thank you for those watching the replay. I always want to let you know that if you're watching the replay, you're very welcome to join us any Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central. And we invite you to join our Facebook group. It's just called Writers Chat Members, so it's very easy to find. Thanks again, everybody. And everybody here can stay for the after party. And we'll see everybody else next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.